young people are talented. They're full of ideas. They don't want handouts. All they need is opportunities. They want to connect with industry. They want to connect with capital. Exciting ideas. That, with my conversation with the current generation, Machita, is that they feel misplaced, and they feel that, there's a lot of re-engineering that has to happen, especially mentally, because, we're scripted that you're a provider, but now you stay no mama who's a provider, and you don't know how to balance that.
Wow. Welcome to the Leadingself podcast. My name is Gugulethu Maqetuga, your host. This platform, as I've said before, is about celebrating leaders, celebrating and profiling leaders who are making an impact. This includes leaders who have made, great strides in the past, but also some of them who are making it happen even right now. Today, we are joined by one of those leaders, Mr. Simphiwe Masiza, the CEO of Empowaworx. Sim, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much thank you for coming through, and thank you for honoring us.
No. For you, I will kill a bull.
Thank you.
Like Chuchu used to say about Ushodos.
Indeed. We won't go there.
No. But for you, I'll really burn and ignite. Actually, I'll boil the ocean for you.
Wow, thank you.
I'll do it impossible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Sim, we've seen your star rise in business over the years, and we've seen the impact that you are making. Where did it all begin for you?
It all began at Orange Farm.
Yeah.
I was born in Eastern Cape, and then we moved to Soweto, Kasla Makasi, eventual Orange Farm. But even at Soweto, my mom was very mobile. We moved from Mshengovile, and Mshengovile Bengali copy dice. It was one of Bengal Knoxman. Top dog. Bengal Mercedes, the last number.
Yeah.
And then, I was a gambler of note, come to think of it. Bengalana Nama cards. In the midst of Obo Mama, and I was just there, Bengalan Tuana, then the Lama card. Gladi copy throughout the night in Kumboda Ngidla. And Gladi copy no bubble to the Holamo Ponas, Shaima Dakeoik. I was a breadwinner, I was a breadwinner, I think, when I was 12.
Wow.
Very entrepreneurial. I was a soccer star. I used to coach a team by Biza Amazebras.
Okay.
I used to play, when people, they look at my body, and I normally tell them, good, looks are not deceiving. Our son looks are deceiving.
Not deceiving, indeed.
They used to call me Steenkamp. Because,
okay, I remember.
during those days,
Yes.
But I was one of the best goalkeepers in this, that the country has ever, offered. But like us, I grew up in Soweto, and then school in Soweto, SSICO, a white city.
Yeah.
Eventually, to a school called Lambola. And then eventually Orange Farm, because it was during, that, fight, I wouldn't say fight, the IFP in Qatar. Then we moved to Orange Farm. Initially, I didn't want to go to Orange Farm for all the obvious reasons, but I was then forced to England, the old lady. But those were
the early days.
The early days.
The early days.
More clever, more clever.
Yeah.
But the rest will.
It was a tough life. I mean,
it was.
It was a tough life. Like most black children.
Yeah.
Tough life. But you pulled through. What were your earliest memories of that life, and how did you really pull yourself by your bootstraps and by what made you who you are today?
It's a dream. I tell young people all the time, in the midst of poverty, and I think it's what is a common tapestry for all of us, Abokudekasi, we know what is poverty. We know what is ugeskera without, provision, or ugeskolwen without, having shoes. But I knew it. There were two things that I used to, to know that, and also because of my biblical, foundation.
Yeah.
There's a scripture that says, as a man, thinketh, or as a woman thinketh in her heart, so is she. I knew early in my days that if I want to reinvent my destiny, I must re-engineer the way I think. And I didn't have to be a wise man from the east, or I have a foresight of a prophet, or have a skin of a chameleon, or become a therapist like Donald Trump and Elon Musk. To know that, that wisdom, that, your future is a direct proportion of your thoughts. And I knew it then that.
Wow.
But then I knew that I was not engineered for mediocrity.
Yeah.
I was engineered for, for greatness.
Yeah.
And I was very clear, clear that I want to be a speaker, and also want to be an entrepreneur. Those were my goals. I think I was 19 when I was in Orange Farm. And fast forward, with God's grace, I'm living my dreams.
Wow. Wow.
Obviously, once you realize, or once you have achieved what you have achieved, then you begin to compare with other people. You realize that, you're scratching the surface. But in the bigger scheme of things, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that from Orange Farm to be here in the studio.
Wow.
The maestro himself.
Thank you. So who are your inspirations? I mean, those days, I can imagine that, young Simphiwe, hustling, going through life at Orange Farm, going to school, going to church.
Yeah.
And who are your inspiration those days? Who are you looking at and saying, one day I just want to be like that girl or that guy?
Yeah. Strange enough, Isola was having Otamingubene.
Yes.
She's a sister and a friend of mine. And then she had somewhere that during my early days, I was an exorcist. Keep on my timo, shine palm. And she says to me, Masiza, why don't you go back? Yeah, do one of the patala masala and shine palm. One of the patala rent and Empowaworx.
Yeah.
I'm not God has called you. I'm in the workplace ministry now, but let's come back.
Yeah.
I was inspired by Dr. David Mkhize.
Wow.
I'll never forget. We had a trip to Standard Bank Arena, and then it was Family Factory before it became Joy Celebration. They're performing. In the midst of that, they then called this young man called Dr. David Mkhize. He came in with energy, gravitas, with charisma. Otamaki better stage, and then he said, I think it was close to 2,000 of us as young people. I was in standard 10 or from 5, not grade 12. And he said, young man, you must have great ease. You must have desire, determination, and discipline. I had a paradigm shift. From that day,
wow,
I knew that I was engineered for greatness.
Wow.
And David continues to inspire me, and I continue to look up to him. And I'm forever, ever grateful that I agreed to attend to the trip, but also, to connect with Dr. David Mkhize.
Yeah, you ended up working for him.
I ended up working for him out of the 4,000 young people.
Wow.
I knew that I wanted to work for David.
How did that happen?
As life, as people would say that there are no coincidences, there are coincidences. Then it happened that there's a friend of mine, his name was Patrick Luate.
Okay.
We are running a program called Built for Life, for young people at Orange Farm. We used to take them for camps, and we used to run them, these motivational, programs. And it happened that Patrick Luate, he has a closer relationship with David.
Okay.
And then I called David, said, David is this young man, who's full of energy. He likes to meet, he will appreciate to have a meeting with you. I met with David, we connected, as they say, the rest is history. I worked for ICANN Foundation. That's where my career started. Then, from ICANN Foundation, I went to work for different companies, including Unilever. I used to run an investment arm within the Unilever. It was called Workers Investment Corporation as a CEO. But it started with the ICANN Foundation. Yeah.
Wow.
Through Dr. David Mkhize. Wow. And I'm forever grateful to that man.
You talk about wanting a speaker, and I know you do a lot of speaking engagements. In fact, you even run Speakers Firm now. To promote speakers. What was it? David's influence that got you to speak?
No, it was David. Even when I think 7 years ago, I decided not to stop speaking. It's only now that I think I'm ready to go back. To do what I used to do 7 years ago. But it was Dr. David Mkhize.
Wow. What for you is the significance of speaking? I mean, we've seen great speakers from the pulpit. We've seen great speakers from corporate podiums. What to you is the change or the difference that a speaker makes, in people's lives?
No, just share your story. People, I was talking 2 days ago, I was talking to young people about, pathways to, entrepreneurship and wealth creation, that there are many ways to make money. And part of that, we call it a voice. If you look at TD Jakes as a voice, if you look at Trevor Noah, they don't sell products; they are products themselves. It's and also they have a story to tell. It's when you don't sell a business, you're a business, yourself, and it's when you know that you're having a cutting edge content that is transformative, and you're willing to share that, but also you're willing to commercialize that. And for me, what has propelled me to go back into speaking, it's mainly because of that one has a story to tell. With what we have done now with Empowaworx, with some of our platforms or assets, I think we have a story to tell.
I mean, you and I grew up in the church, so the speaking gig is something that is sort of relatable to and we've seen how lives have changed, how people have been inspired to make great strides, I suppose, in their lives. Would you say for you as well is a combination of those inspiring speakers that you came across? I know you fraternize with the Abna Mariris of this world, Caesar Mulibati, all those great. Would you say it's a combination of some of those inspiring speakers and leaders who have impacted your life?
Lot, for example, one of the guy that and may so rest in peace was Dr. Miles Monroe. I read everything about Miles Monroe. I remember I was Bentlado Orange Fandom Kukui, and I would read all his books. From understanding your potential, releasing your potential, maximizing your potential, purpose, in pursuit of vision. But I knew that, one day I want to connect with this man, and as they say that, the rest is history. With God's grace, I had an opportunity to host him, when he came here in South Africa, and I had a bilateral with Dr. Miles Monroe. And to an extent that when he passed on, I got a lot of calls because people, they thought that I'm close to him. I said, guys, he's a guy that I looked up to. I had an opportunity just to, to host him. So it's Dr. David Mkhize, who happens to, to support what I do. Is in our portfolio. I run one of the biggest speakers bureau in the country called the Speakers Firm. We represent some of prominent voices in this country. You talk about Maurice Radebe, you just talk about Abna Mariri, you talk about your Professor Chirizi, your Monang Mohale, the former deputy president of the country, Dr. Pumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. She's in our portfolio. Because we believe that we have this power that is very transformative and the content that is transformative, particularly as African speakers. Because you go to corporate, and when I used to do a lot of speaking, they would then say, "Where are the black speakers?" And I was inspired to start the Speakers Fair.
Wow, nice.
In the main is to house that African talent.
Wow, yeah, wow. I mean, and we'll get into some of the work that you do through your organization Empowaworx.
Yeah.
I'm also interested in how family plays a very important role in your life, and how close you are with your siblings.
Yeah.
And your mom. May her soul rest in peace.
Yeah.
What were the values for you that you learned from that great woman? Because I know she was a powerhouse.
No, yeah. My mom, she was very resilient. She had a foresight of a prophet. She had a nerve of a steel. Odilambe, she was a single parent. It was 4 of us. She was able to raise us. She was a Shebin queen to days where I wanted to be a Hebin king.
Indeed.
Yeah. She was a Shebin queen, but we would try be all ladies. Sense of humor, even at the height of a pain, especially I should make fun about other patients. And I've learned from her that even in the midst of challenges, as Robert Schuller says, that tough times never last but tough people. Tough times never last, but kind of people do. But she inspired me. She truly, I am who I am because of your lady. Wow. And I borrow from one of the philosophers that says, all that I am and all that I ever hope to become, I owe it to my mom. I've lost her 7 years ago, and I always tell people that the pain of losing your old lady, it's inexplicable. And I have my issues in the time. I need therapy. I think people that say Masiza, you need therapy. I've accepted I need therapy.
I need therapy.
Bottom line, go to Kumbula already.
And
my siblings, like any other relationship, my sisters work, or Sialwa, Klabana, Siakolelana. And I normally tell people that my siblings, now. An incredible relationship. Family, I'm inspired by my kids. I don't know whether I'm a good partner, but I know that I'm a good guy. I'm a good dad.
Indeed.
I'm a good. I make a good. Even my son was blown away when my son wrote, something during the Father's Day and said, "Dad, I look up to you.
Wow,
you're my role model." Wow. And in Twana Mukanda says, "I we convince her otherwise." The daughter sometimes bribe and bashing McDonald and all that.
But the son is.
But if Ilvanam can then say that, then that you're doing a good job.
Wow.
And awesome. I remember Mangva, I had a speaking engagement, on that day, on the Father's Day. On the Father's Day. And my son said, "Dad, you keep on having these meetings, Oh, what's happening?" And I was saying to my son, I don't want you to grow up the way I grew up. I'm creating pathways for you to achieve your greatness and what God has initiated for you.
Yeah, I know.
No better generation here today. Tinazos could see ushugela. I want ushugela but so shesa. Bengathi senza ngathi senza i-rooibos out of ushugela ngathi coffee. And then in our mind will then feel good as it's pussy coffee.
And it's sugar.
And it's sugar, sometimes more papa and Namazamba and you feel good,
It's a great meal.
It's a great meal. And therefore that's why we, we appreciate where we come from, and then but we give back. I say to people all the time that never forget the bridges that carried you through. Always extend the hand to your brother.
Indeed. What inspired the formation of Empowaworx? I mean, this company is literally, becoming one of. It's a juggernaut. It's impacting different areas of people's lives. What inspired Empowaworx?
Yeah, thank you so much. Empowaworx is truly inspired by my philosophy of access.
Okay.
At a core of Empowaworx is to facilitate access. Ideas to capital, youth to opportunities, women to transformative platforms, men to cutting edge, content. That's what we do. At a core of what we do is to bring industry and young people that are passionate and talented, and is to marry the two. Well, that's all that we do. We at a core, I know that there's a lot of complexities, but at a core of what we do is to facilitate that connectivity.
Wow.
We operate at the intersection between policy, capital, and opportunities. That's who we are.
Yeah.
That's why my cars, my cars, they will always say, Masiza, singena kanjani. I was far,
Yeah.
and then that's what I'm saying with sifuna ukukufaka. Sifuna ukukufaka if you are thoroughly prepared, you have equipped yourself for opportunities. Our role is empowered.
Yeah.
Purely just to bring opportunities. Sorry for that.
Yes. And when you talk of opportunities, there are a lot of skeptics out there saying, the system does not work for me. The system is arranged against me. The environment is such that it's not enabling for me.
Yeah.
You came on board with Empowaworx to change the narrative.
Yeah, my man. I think I've said this. And I always make an illustration. If you're late in the party, you don't curse the party. You're just late in the party.
Yeah.
But the ones that have arrived early in the party, they must raise their voice with necessity. It's a simple philosophy. If I have a party and I invite all of you and I decide to go to be late, and maybe it's because of transport, because of access, but you're late. But don't say with la party Masiza ben komland. Just say with if you're late, and But here's the challenge that we have is that laba badlile sometimes bayathula.
Yeah.
Or with civility.
Yeah.
And it's also about it's also about the system. And I tell people that the ones that have benefited through the transformative policies of this government, they must raise their voices.
Yeah.
Because most of us we have. You talk about BE, you talk about employment equity, you talk about township economy now. The ones that are benefiting, which there's a lot of them, they must raise their voices and say, the system might not be perfect, but we have benefited. Here we are. But the second thing that I want to raise is that sometimes, I make this illustration even zasekas, whether kumngcwabo or umshado, kukhona lo gogo umu-invayithayo their role nje kuphela ukutshontsha nokufihla amakhekhe. Yabaza bogogo lapha. And bayaziwa ukuthi ugogo Mary makakhona.
Ikhekhe liyanyamala.
Amakhekhe ayanyamala. Or inyama nje kuphela out of nowhere, but namazi ukuthi le nyama ifihla ugogo Mary. The issue is we need to confront ugogo Mary because there's nothing wrong about the system. Ukuthi ugogo Mary utshontsha amakhekhe wafihla inyama. And sometimes that's what is happening, that sometimes because of corruption and bribery and people have lost hope. We find out you are aiding the party, but there's a human, error or tendencies. And what it does, it then not inspire hope and confidence to people that the policies of this country and the system is working, and people, they think that it's not working.
It's not working.
It's not, and I'm, like any other system, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
But the ones that have benefited, they must come out, and I've started a campaign. I think you might have seen.
Yeah. I'm seeing it, and in fact, I have the post that you posted recently around how gatekeepers are keeping business people, young entrepreneurs out.
But just general, Cooks, general, it's, yes, and I don't know whether it's us. I think that maybe we're scripted differently, but sometimes as Funo Bono when you can succeed.
Yeah.
You know? And Mang Bono go to cook and I cook succeed. I make it my mission, to be an hindrance, or a stumbling block. And I've seen this thing. I've seen it, I've seen it even, a friend of mine was telling me that, his invoices are delayed because he's driving a luxury car. Somebody else would tell you that I'm sympathizing along over, you're born ukuthi ohlale santini. Those, it's no longer about merits, it's no longer about, skills. It's about ukuthi we want to prove over. And the majority of times this thing is done ngabantu abamnyama against abanye abantu abamnyama.
What do you think is the driver of that? I mean,
it's just pure jealous. I think from BD, obviously it's a scripting. We're scripted like that. But look, if I've provided a service, just pay me for my service. Using me not because majority of times not because I'm poor, because I can solve the problem. Therefore, your reasoning that you delay the payment of my invoices, because I'm driving E-Land or EX5, it doesn't make sense.
You talk about scripting. Who holds the pen? Who's driving this development that makes black hate or self-hate become a reality?
I don't want to tell you that. I think PV did an incredible work.
In painting that picture.
All I can say is, there's an African proverb that says, until lions have their own historians, then all stories about hunting will glorify the hunter. As Africans, we need to be architects of our own destiny. We need to write our own stories. And I agree with what you're saying. Maybe somebody's writing our stories. But we need to re-engineer if the system is not working, we need to reconfigure the system.
And it's a reality. I mean, I'm thinking that especially for small, young business people out there who are, in essence, at a survival stage of and you've been there, as Empowaworx, where you are starting out and you truly believe that you need the support that you can get, because you're not doing this because you want to rob people, or you're offering a service. There are skills that you have and you must be paid. How do we turn that around? I mean, how do we turn this story? Because it seems to be getting worse by the day.
Look, as I said, we all have something to offer. And as we are saying that we must also understand the ecosystem where we operate. If I'm in business and I provide a service, I must be compensated for it.
Yeah.
It's like if somebody come and work for Empowaworx, and I agree, this is how much I'll pay you. I can't say at the end of the month, because I saw you driving in with an X5, I can't pay you. It's
unethical.
It's unethical. I've made a commitment. So is when you provide a service, you must be paid.
Yeah.
People, they must not weaponize their positions, because they can. It's ungodly, it's unethical, it's anti-transformation, it's evil.
It's anti-black.
And it's anti-black and anti-progress, And all I'm asking and all I've been saying which is part of what we do as Empowaworx, is, when you are in the position of power, authority must not be singular. Authority must be plural. You must be able to share authority.
Yeah.
Because it's cut, sometimes you are in that position for a moment, but make sure that while you are there, you multiply yourself, you multiply your influence. And as I said, authority must be shared.
Yeah.
And people, they must feel your impact. I was listening to, and I like this story. There's a guy called Femi. You might have heard about Femi, a Nigerian billionaire. Femi just narrates the story that his friend just asked him to buy a land, a wheelchair 200 for disabled kids. The guy said he went to the party, bought the 200 wheelchairs, and then he was handing out the wheelchairs. As he was about to leave, one of the kids, Wambamba, grabbed him, and as he wanted to pull himself from the grip of this child, he bent, and as he bent, the child looked straight to him and said, "I wanted to see your face."
Wow.
So that when I'm in heaven, I can remember you.
Wow.
And thank you again.
Wow.
And I guess that it has been my philosophy, and I guess it has to be a philosophy and a shared philosophy for all of us.
Yeah.
That the impact that you make, you might not feel it now, but it's something that can resonate, for life to eternity.
Indeed.
Yeah.
When I look at, let's go back to the programs that Empowaworx does.
Yeah.
And for me, what grabs me most is Empower Youth.
Yeah.
This, and I don't want to, whether to call it a concept, to call it a project, to call it a movement, but I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of young people pack stadiums, pack marquees and you've brought. Tell us about that project.
It's one of the biggest platforms that we run for young people. Started in Orange Farmer 7 years ago because as you know that I grew up, I've spent most of my time in Kasi. I started with 200 young people. And then when I went to Orange Farmer, we hosted up to 20,000 young people. 4,000 a day for 5 days.
I was there. I saw it.
You remember?
I even participated.
Yeah, you also spoke. Yeah,
I spoke.
We had 20,000 young people, unemployed, young people. Those are graduates. Those are young entrepreneurs. Those are some of them are despondent young people. And we brought up to 200, top speakers, including yourself and companies. The whole essence for me is to bring opportunities to peri-rural, to rural areas, to townships, so that young people have an access to connect with industry. I think that at the core of why we have Empower Youth is that we've done this throughout the country.
Wow.
And then if, for example, we activate Empower Youth, the last time, when we activated, it was in Ekurhuleni, we had Empower Youth Ekurhuleni. But before then, we had Cape Town. And then before Cape Town, we had Northwest. Northwest, we were targeting up to 1,000 young people. We ended up with 4,000 young people, KZN, the same. We're targeting, I think, 2,000, ended up with 4,000. And some of these young people, they say, we are not going home.
Wow.
Then tabai thola ngaphakathi nathi siyayifuna.
Wow.
Where to open and violate, some of them.
Joke rules.
But even the joke official, they say there's nothing we can do. We can't chase these kids to go back because clearly, they are driven and passionate and hungry for opportunities.
In fact, that's the point for me. It's the hunger. Yeah. Young people are not lazy. Yeah. Young people are not disconnected. Yeah. It's opportunities.
Yeah, they are looking for opportunities. They don't want handouts, and I've always I've traveled, as I said, the country. We've impacted close to 160 young people.
60,000 young people.
No, 160,000. because it's a hybrid. We have this hybrid model. We've been running this for the past 7 years. Empower youth. But what I can tell you is that young people are talented. They're full of ideas. They don't want handouts. All they need is opportunities. They want to connect with industry. They want to connect with capital. Exciting ideas.
I think what I like also about your model with Empower Youth is also the partnership and the partnering that happens between young people and corporates.
Yeah.
So it's more similar to, in fact, what the YES program that the president has is trying to do, to say, how do we get corporates to adopt young people, give 20 learnerships and stuff like that. Have you seen change happen, especially, with some of those youths?
We have, but look, we believe we can do more.
Yeah.
The beauty is that as Empower Youth now, we are also invited to participate in some policy, conversations. We hosted the minister lately. I think 2 weeks ago, she came over to our offices. We had a round table, conversation with her. Before then, we had what we call Empower Youth in Daba, where we had your Yes guys, your Arambe, all the stakeholders in the youth development ecosystem to say, do we need to work on policy transformation, issues? Do we need to reconfigure some of, the programs that we run? Or do we need to find ways to collaborate as key stakeholders in this ecosystem? Because you look at YES, you look at NYDA, you look at Arambe, you look at Empower Youth. I believe that if we could join resources, we could have great aim.
Wow. I mean, talking about the fire that is lit in the eyes of these young people, especially when relatable leaders come into their space and get to inspire them and get to and also talk about their own journeys and all their own struggles, because I think most of the time we try to create pictures of perfection when in essence we all have had struggles. I mean,
no, we do not. And one of our, when we brief a speaker, there are two things that are non-negotiable. You share your story. Don't give us, data that is that young people they cannot relate to. But secondly, you bring opportunities, whether it's one or two, so that this thing is not a chalk and talk. It's a real about connecting young people to opportunities. Some of the speakers like yourself, I think 2 or 3 people that we mentored, you went back to Orange Farm, to run, some of the and that's how we measure success. That if we have 200 speakers, I normally say to some of the guys, take 1 or 2 young person, mentor them, coach them, invite them to experience, how to run a business if you're running a business. And then if you are your ABSA, your African bank, maybe take 10 of them, in your program. Like now, the Ikurulen one, we're done with it. We're getting a lot of corporate to say, we're running an ESG program, Masiza, give me 5 of them.
Wow.
Masiza, we're having we just concluded a partnership with some international youth organization where we have agreed that we need to explore some international opportunities in the hospitality space. Because it's only now that, I think as much as we have built that reputational or brand equity, it's only now that corporate are,
they're taking notice. Partnering.
And including, as I said now, and the vision that we have is Pan-African. We want to take this asset or want to take this platform, not only in South Africa, want to take it to Lesotho, to Niger, because it's a platform that is needed, in the continent.
You have another interesting platform that you have, which is Empowerman. And I've had the privilege, of attending some of the events around what you do at Empowerman. And for me, what comes out very strong is about the values that manhood and being a man, that is pronounced a lot in the events. Tell us about the history behind empowerment, you and Sichaba are sitting and deciding that let's attack men.
Man, yeah. Men, banning king and cheaters. By a color, by, it's that. I think the challenge that we have as men, how I started Empowerment, I started because I used to host Amachita, where I stay. I think I started with 20, we ended up with 50. The last gathering, I had 200 people. Where I stay, and I realized that now this thing has to be a movement. Then I started Empowerment. The last event that we had last year, we had 2,500 men, and we're dealing with issues that men are wrestling with. Issues around identity, health, especially around mental health. GBV, because some of the men, they were saying to us, not to say Ashaya Makaya. We need to have that, conversation. And just the role of men in this, changing society.
Yeah.
A festival of, of content that is targeting to men. We're launching another one now called Empower Him. Empower Him is for young men, because what we have realized is that, young men from 0 to 18 was scared that they're taking care of you. 18 to 35, and I call it a missing middle. These young people they don't know who to look up to, because even that, we have not discovered who we are, and therefore we're launching something. We're supposed to launch it now in July for 4,000 young men, where we run programs or a summit, the same thing that we did for empower men, and then we want to use the same model, to talk to
to young
men from 18 to 35.
What do you think is the disconnect? And I'm thinking here, statistics say that majority of the crime is done by men.
Yeah.
Men are more violent. GBV,
it's men.
Largely it's men.
Yeah.
What do you think? Is there? I call it ifufunyan, a psychological displacement. That sometimes as men we experience, and we then tend to be violent and not have the skills to deal with stress, contradictions. What are you finding from conversations that you're having through Empowerment with men? Why we have such
I think
challenge?
I think with my conversation with the current generation, Machita, is that they feel misplaced, and they feel that, there's a lot of re-engineering that has to happen, especially mentally, because, we're scripted that you're a provider, but now you stay no mama who's a provider, and you don't know how to balance that.
Wow.
You find that your monthly salary is daily limit or and you can't manage those complexities, and sometimes Amachita, which is it's ungodly, it's wrong, and they resort to violence. When because we are scripted differently, or not differently, and because it's part of our scripting to where we are. But the other thing that I've also realized is we need a lot of mentorship. And I guess, Cooks, and we can have this conversation Monday. It's the challenges that men are facing. Is that tapestry that cuts across. I had a conversation with up to 50 senior pastors. We're just having a conversation there. These are bishops, these are prophets, these are guys who are running, big churches, things that they go through, Therefore, this conversation, Yamachita and Amatime, it's important.
It
is. And then you don't find good measure. And I guess now the narrative is changing, that there's been a lot of spotlight, there, and Nabo Mama. And it's the ladies now, when we talk, they say we need to spotlight, issues that men are struggling with, because if we don't do that, then we'll continue to have these issues.
Wow. Simon, as we wrap up this conversation, what are your hopes for South Africa?
Yeah.
For Empowaworx?
Yeah.
And the work that you do,
yeah.
and what long-term legacy impact do you think you want to see, beyond the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, for me, Empowaworx, I really want Empowaworx to be a Pan-African, high impact development agency. I'm clear on that. My legacy is, have the ability to connect, as I said, connect ideas to capital, connect young people to opportunities, not only here in South Africa, but throughout the continent.
Yeah.
I want us to be, a platform of hope for young people, a platform of hope for, for entrepreneurs. We just launched now, something called Empower Entrepreneurs Funding Summit, where we connect ideas and funding. Inspiration for, for man. We are all struggling, including myself. I'm not perfect as much as, hey, I'm not perfect. Now my issues were. I need therapy myself. And I guess, the platform also works for me, as an architect of the platform.
Yeah.
And that is my hope, Cooks. If you ask me my closing remarks is particular to young people that are listening is, or to anyone who's listening, that you might be going through challenges, but if you have a dream and a sense of purpose, you'll always have a crowd of people who don't believe in you. You'll always challenges. There's this philosopher that says, even in winter, you don't burn your furniture to make fire. You don't give up. It's not easy for all of us. But what we know is that we're driven, by a sense of destiny. But over and above, we also, because I'm a Christian. My take is that whatever that I do, I want it to have an impact to the fifth generation. To my posterity. Therefore, I'm not myopic in my disposition, and therefore I'm saying to those who are listening, collectively, we can accelerate progress. As you know, Cooks, I've started a campaign now, and maybe I must share. I've started a digital story, sharing campaign. And the focus on that campaign is to, spotlight some of the incredible young people that are doing incredible work.
Wow.
Because, you go at Kasi, the young people are despondent, they're hopeless. And I was saying when I had an opportunity to talk to Sandile Memela, and I was saying, our role now is to highlight. I've started with a guy called, you might know, Sia Cruza.
Yes, Sia Cruza. Yes. We want him on this show.
I'll bring him.
He's an amazing fellow. He's got a planet named after him.
He's a planet, but the young people, they don't know. That's
exactly.
One of our own has a planet,
named after him. We want him here.
There's a guy that I met, a young man that I met 2 weeks ago, tiny, unassuming, early 30s, is running a bank, is the CEO of, FNB, private bank. I've met another lady, who runs early 30s, who runs, Cooler. It's a Cooler app. It's $1 billion, rand business. Young. And I want to begin to use the platform that I have. And, and I've said to some of my networks, let's begin to highlight some of these stories. South Africa, we have one of the best banking system in the world. We export. If you look at Amapiano,
it's taken the world. It's taken the world.
You look at
by storm.
You look at Trevor Noah. You look at Tuso. You look at Black Coffee. And my view is that if we can begin to celebrate those guys, then it will then begin to change this narrative that there are no opportunities in this country, and also the narrative within Tuana and Awasisteri, they end up looking up to wrong people. While there's so much that this country has done, for the youth of this country. Yeah.
Wow, nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sim. Thank you for honoring us and gracing us. I think Empowaworx's story still needs to be written.
Indeed.
And I think it's still early days in my view, and I think we wish you more and more success and more impact. Guys, thank you for tuning in and listening to the Leadingself podcast. As they say, like, share, subscribe. Salute.